Hello, hello. Welcome to the Coaching Business Spotlight Show. I'm your host, Kat Knecht, and I'm excited to share with you soul-driven strategies to help you succeed in your business and your life. Today, we're going to look at how the profession of coaching works across cultures. My guest today is going to help me explore the topic of coaching. We're going to look at what is the same no matter what culture you live in and what is different. We're also going to look at how she got started as a coach in Korea, her unique status as a translator for the Coaches Training Institute workshops, and other ways she has traversed and created a cross-cultural business success as a coach. My guest is Joonyoung Kim. Joon is a productivity and leadership coach based in Korea. She runs a private coaching program called Redesign Productivity, through which she helps women leaders and entrepreneurs cultivate resonant productivity. In addition, she partners with various leadership development firms and leadership circle to cultivate authentic and creative corporate leaders across Asia. She coaches in English and Korean on, offline, across borders and time zones. And that's why I've invited her on the show today. So welcome to the show, June.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for having me.
It is so great to have you. I'm really looking forward to really unpacking, kind of exploring your journey and kind of letting our listeners know there's different ways they can go about doing it. So tell me, just what inspired you to become a coach to begin with?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I've had like a bit of a eclectic career transitions over time, and I've played in the learning and development space, especially as a education go-to-market person. But yeah, and I was just before I turned a full-time coach, also I was working as a training consultant in luxury segment. But, developing people and educating people were always part of my career path. So I was teaching music, I was teaching English, I was teaching sales and customer experience to the luxury professionals. So it's always been kind of pillar, but I've always noticed that although I really love being in front of people and lecturing and all that, I felt my biggest impact came from one-on-one engagements. So
Ah, I
when I
love that.
was
I just want to bring in here for our listeners because I know a lot of coaches, they have experiences. I mean, you have a lot of experience here. Really, really rich. And yet there was something, that's what I'm hearing. There was something that was calling you that was different than what you've been doing, but also, kind of included the things that you've been doing.
Yeah, I think that's where I felt the resonance we call, right? So, although, it's very rewarding to see the group of people progressing, that intimacy and the very close connection that you feel when you're in a one-on-one settings and when they come to you and say, I was able to change in so and so way because of our conversations, or I was able to take a step forward because of conversations that we had. I was coaching them in a sense when I didn't know I was coaching them. So yeah, I think that was a really big propel. And when it came to a pandemic, I decided to just really invest a lot in coaching studies. That was about 3 years ago, and
Wow.
I just never looked back since.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell it, and I know you, June. So you're in the soul driven success community. So I know June. I know one of the reasons I brought her on here is because I know some of the things that you have been able to create. So you became a coach. I'm kind of curious just a little bit, like how did you even find coaching or how did it pop up on your radar?
Well, when I was working as an education go-to-market person for a big global company, part of my job was to make sure that we deliver competitive training contents to the market that was in line with our commercial strategies and, equipping our salespeople with Grow was one of the contents that we were delivering. I didn't really deliver it myself directly. But, I kind of got exposed to coaching approach in that indirect manner. Of course, looking back, I really had no idea what grow or coaching was back then.
Right.
And then, when I was studying talent development more holistically, I have an international certification in talent development by ATD. And, coaching was one of the pillars. So I got to kind of
Got it.
study what coaching was theoretically. And then, working as a training consultant, more companies demand coaching in their training content, right? So I was implementing what I kind of know theoretically from my own experiences, etc., when I was developing content. So I kind of got introduced to coaching in a very slow manner through corporate demands.
Yeah.
But I also felt that at the time, like what the companies are asking for were very like unrealistic versions of coaching that they didn't really even like, at least back then the companies were not quite ready to really invest in transforming people. I think that's happening a lot more
Right.
nowadays.
Right. And I'm
So
imagining, knowing you, that was one of the things that inspired you about coaching. Was that it was actually about bringing about transformation of the person,
yeah,
not
I
just
think I
getting
wanted
a
to like do
task
it
done.
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I want to look at, you have this very unique role for the Co-Active Training Institute. That, and many people listening to this podcast will know the Coactive Training Institute. I'm just really curious what that experience is like for you to translate the courses. Like, yeah, I've been just like super curious. What does that do? Like, how does that work for you to actually be able to have to take the words and make it,
Yeah.
take them from one language to another, but taking in that some of that learning that happens there.
It is a First of all, it's a huge privilege that I'm able to do this. And so when I was going through the corrective courses, it was like just on the cusp of the pandemic. So usually the corrective partner in Korea, Miss Suki, she flies in international leaders
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have that many corrective leaders in Korea. So she flies them in, and because she couldn't fly them in during the pandemic, we had to connect them like hybrid. So they were on screen, and Suki was leading, and we were like things were happening like real time. So
I
we were,
remember.
yeah. So we were having a translator, and even though I understood the language completely, like having that kind of lack of like misses and gaps in between, it really kind of interfere with my listening and with my attention level. So I felt that it was a really gap that could be filled better. So when after I graduated and when Suki asked me to do it, I was like gladly, because I
Mm.
really feel that corrective program has so much bigger place in this culture, and I really want this program to do well and grow. So at first I kind of started thinking like, oh, it's going to be a good refresher, but it turned out to be so much more than that. I mean,
What would you say is the biggest, like, I don't know, I don't even know the word to use here, learning, or when you say it's so much bigger than that, what do you get to learn yourself or kind of take in because you translate?
well, personally, I think it's two things,
Yeah, personally.
personally and also as somebody who's contributing. So personally, I mean, I get to work directly with the amazing, phenomenal collective leaders, really side by side.
Mm.
So I'm learning not just from the courses, but a lot from the master coaches I work with. And when I say directly, I mean it very figuratively and also
Yeah,
literally,
right.
because I am sitting like next to them, and then whatever the participants are saying, I whisper them into their ears simultaneously.
Wow.
And I'm actually quite impressed with myself that I could do that
I think
without
that's very impressive. And I'm curious, what do you notice when you coach? Like, how has that impacted your coaching?
just being exposed to the corrective program so many times. I just get to become fully corrective in my own coaching as well. And And also, I get to watch a lot of different styles of coaching from these master coaches. So, I feel like even with the same approach that I take, I'm able to really exercise a breadth of range, I guess.
Yes, I would imagine that's quite a range that you can.
Yeah. And how people, and also I become a better teacher, I feel, of coaching. I'm beginning to actually do more training and coaching a little bit here and there. And, the way I explain things, it becomes very flexible. I have more ways of explaining things. So that's really, for my own growth. But I think what's really rewarding about this experience is that me being in front of the room alongside the leaders kind of represents, I feel, the gray area of identity for a lot of coaches. Because I'm very like mix of culture, mix of influences, and I'm not a typical like a Korean woman. I'm very much in the we call them fourth dimension. Somebody from
Okay.
fourth dimension here.
I'm very curious. What does that mean, that fourth dimension?
It's like, Korea is a kind of society that where norm is very important.
Mm.
Being normal and fitting into the community. It's traditionally Korean societies values community over individuality. And, working together, coming together is so fundamental as a society and historically in achieving the kind of economic growth that we have achieved in such a short period of time. So thinking together and acting together, what has been so instrumental. Now, this notion is being disintegrated, but still, being similar is very important. So being different myself kind of is, I feel like it's a breath of fresh air, I
Oh,
feel.
wow. So I'm really curious, right? Because this is really so there's the cultural difference. That's what you're describing. So Korea, it's it's not the individual does not come first. Yet in coaching, we are usually coaching the individual. So how does that work? How do you what do you notice when you coach someone from Korea? Like what's the coaching impact that's different?
Yeah, I feel like that's why coaching still has a lot of room to grow in this culture. It's still quite new and it's definitely growing. And so far, coaching has been pretty dominant in the corporate coaching segment. And a lot of individuals still don't know what coaching is. A lot of coaches don't really bother to think about making a living as a life coaches or
Mm.
change coaches. So there is a big room, and it is true that there is a lot of invisible rigid social constructs that most people are kind of embedded with, they're instilled with. So wanting to change
Mhm.
itself is new.
Is that
And
radical?
coaching is for people who want to change.
That's right. That's right.
So, you know, that itself, the notion itself is very scary, very exciting, and it's being more accepted. So I feel very hopeful. I think there are more young people who experience coaching. I just did free coaching for some university students, and they were like, wow, I can change. It's okay to change,
Oh, that is
you know?
so. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm curious where is there a because when I heard you talking about there's some positive things. I'll put it like this. It sounds like there's some positive things in the Korean culture about thinking of the whole and not the individual. But there's this missing piece that you see where the individuals can make personal changes. I'm kind of like, where do you see those two things going together? It's kind of a big question, but I'm curious.
I kind of see it as Korean people become being very dynamic. We are very
Uh,
forward and progress driven people.
mhm.
We want to do things very well and we want to become better, like collectively. I think that's really the strength of Korean people,
Yeah, that's what
and
I'm hearing. Yeah, I'm hearing that.
Yeah, and quality is very important. So, people don't really want to, can I say this? People don't really want to half-ass in anything.
You can say
So,
it. You can.
okay.
Yeah.
So, there's a
Wow.
tremendous sense of like excellence,
Hmm.
and you do that collectively. So on that journey, I think also there's some compensation happening, because we drive results, we drive progress, and so in that process, there's a lot of like black and white thinking, and and a lot of like just tremendous sense of responsibility. Like I gotta get this done. I have to do my responsibility, and I'm not worthy if I cannot play this role. So it's kind of things that you see in other cultures as well, but I think it's kind of heightened by the histories and our own narrative, cultural narrative.
Yeah, that's what I'm so curious about. And if when you coach people in other cultures, what do you notice? So in for Korean people, there's this drive. That's the word I use. There's this do it really, really well. And I want to, what's the, I don't know. I'm just curious if you coach somebody from another culture, what's different?
You know what? That's actually a really good point of convergence and divergence at the same time, because if you put it that way, in the coaching context, I feel like it's kind of the same.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because coaching happens under the premise that we are here for a purpose,
That's
that we're
right.
working toward a goal, right? So
Mhm.
once you actually like buy into that condition, and I think it really depends on, the person's readiness and the willingness. And I think that that kind of stuff is global, not just Korean. I don't think that, some Korean people can come in and just create leaps, progress leaps and bounds. And then, some people from other cultures that's supposed to be more open and progressive could come into the coaching sessions, and they might be quite close to possibilities.
Mhm.
So I feel like this coaching space is quite sacred
I love
and
that.
neutral in that sense.
Yeah, that's what I've been curious about. I agree. I mean, that is the premise that coaching really, this is what I have loved about my career and working for the Coactive Training Institute, because there are people from all over the world who come to these courses, and there's a common experience that they all have, just what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Everybody has something they want, they have desires, there's something they're aiming for, there's a growth. I mean, that's what, if they come to coaching especially, there's something, that change that they're wanting. But then I
yeah,
got curious about, because I don't, I do coach, I coach people of different cultures, and I do notice not the individual difference so much as you're talking about, but I do notice there's a difference in kind of where my clients get trapped or blocked, or
yeah,
depending on what culture they come from, kind of what they've been taught is right. You were saying this earlier, what's right or
yeah,
wrong and what's going to be okay. And I
yeah,
have to be aware of that, because I
yeah,
have to realize, well, that wouldn't bother me at all, because that isn't at all how I was. That's not in my culture. That's a fine thing to do. So I
yeah.
can just skip my way into that. Um,
I I think on that note, I think it's kind of fair to point out that perhaps I do experience a lot of self-limiting beliefs that are quite rigid around gender roles. So
yeah.
yeah, and Korea is a society with a very, very specific gender roles, and hierarchy is very, very important here. So, you know, there's a lot of cultural shoulds,
Yes.
what you should be, how you should be, as a woman, and I'm very passionate about coaching women is because, we women are big doers, and across the cultures, we do a lot of things,
Yes, we do.
taking care of children, working, and we get things done. But I think there is a tremendous sense of guilt and shame that are associated with, not playing that part. So if you're a woman and if you're unmarried and if you're working too hard in Korea, you are kind of looked upon your ass like, how come you're not dating? What's going on? Or if you don't have children, and you're married and you don't have children, it's not really fitting into that norm again. So I
Right.
feel like there is maybe thicker layers
Uh-huh.
of these beliefs that could be kind of transcendental, but maybe it carries extra weight
Yeah.
in certain
And
contexts.
and just as a guidance for other coaches, what do you address that with your clients? Do is that a part of the coaching that you do? That let's look at the cultural limiting beliefs. Let's look at where like what you're coming in with. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I specifically talk about this with women and say, hey, are you aware that Korea is a very thick with gender bias? Right? And then when I talk about this, when I bring it up, they 100% know what I'm talking about because they all feel and experience this. And they are happy that somebody like kind of articulate the kind of invisible stress they have been feeling. So
Mm.
I feel like, these things just need to be talked about more, and, coaching conversations are a safe place to address these things. And, as collective coaches, we are supposed to approach with whole person view, right? So it's
That's
not
right.
just their work that's gonna have to be
Right.
addressed. It's who you are and your life and all the other aspects of life that are kind of influencing and affecting each other. So I feel it's integral to talk about these things as
I
long
love
as the client is open.
Yeah, and so there's like 3 points that you've made that I want to underline for the listeners because most of the people listening to this are coaches. So I think this is a really important piece that we address the culture that the people that we're coaching live in and find out, get curious about it. There's also a piece here. I think as coaches, there is a permission, like you said, if the clients are open, if most people love to be seen and heard. And what I heard you just saying is you name that for them. Here's what's happening. Here's what's happening in this culture. Here's how, here's a way that we've been treated or the experience that we're having. But there's something else you said that got me very excited because I believe coaching. This is why I do what I do, helping coaches build their business, because I actually think this is what will bring about the change all around the world that we are looking for. It
Mm,
sounds, it can, I don't know, even if as I say that, like I actually think so. I don't think it's going to come from wars or, from some big political agenda.
yeah.
I think it's just what you're talking about, June. And you say it so well. I think it's when we can really get at that personal level so people can make those personal changes. And and then how I see it is those personal changes bring about the change in the culture. And it's
Yeah,
very inspiring.
I think this conversation is also very inspirational to me as well, because now I'm reminded of what I have set out to do, which is, you start small. I always feel like, you have to walk the talk as a coach, and then it starts with people around you and who you're talking to. You don't have to lead an entire movement, although that would have been nice. Maybe someday it'll come, but right now I start with my own mom. I start with my
Oh,
clients, and
yeah.
having a very genuine and open and honest conversations that really matter to them. And I feel like one ripple, can really create a wave. I really believe in that.
Mm. I love what you're saying. I want to point out this. So yes, a lot. It would be great to have a movement. I think a lot of us feel that way. Like let's take on the world. But getting down to the nitty gritty, thinking about what actually helps coaches succeed in their business and what helps bring this change about, you really articulated well. It's you got to
Thank-
start small. You got to start small. You got to start with the people around you and the
Yeah,
clients, that you have, and
yeah,
something will build from there. So, thinking
yeah.
about that, I want to just tap into what you have experienced. So, 3 years, what would be some tips you would give coaches on? You just gave one about start small,
Yeah.
about, maybe dialing in those expectations. But what else? What would you say has really helped you to succeed in this career?
I would say, man, there are lots of different things, but I would say, I think for coaches, it's harder to commit to coaching as a profession.
Yes.
You know, and I experienced that myself. I think all of us have experienced that. But, if you think about it, you get a job, and even if you actually don't really feel like you know what you're doing and you're quite new at it, you get hired by a company as a sales representative, for example, and then you have no choice but to give yourself 110%. That's, you just put your back into it. You just do it, right? And you try to do well. And I
I
think in
love
a,
that.
right? And
I
in
love
starting a
that.
business,
No, so I hear you saying you've got to put yourself all in. You got to commit. You just got to commit to it all the way.
yeah, I think if you have an inkling of idea that you will one day become a professional coach or you want to, then I think the commitment just needs to be there. And, and then everything else needs to come into place, like hiring perhaps a mentor, or maybe becoming more business savvy, and, learning about entrepreneurship. And that's another big piece. If you are committing, then you have to consider yourself to be an entrepreneur. I think there's no other
That's right.
way around it.
I think that's
And
kind
it
of kind
took
of
me
no
a
matter
while.
which way you go, even if it's executive coaching or organizations, you still have to put your career together, right?
Yeah.
And just figure out
Yeah.
how you're going to make money.
I don't think it's specific to coaches. I think any freelancers
Mm-hmm.
need to stop thinking that they're freelancers and start thinking like they're entrepreneurs. So I think it's applicable to a lot of different industries. It's like it's a very different mindset when you're operating as a freelancer as opposed to you're a business owner.
That's
So, but I think, the latter is going to give you a lot more excitement and joy and abundance, as, if you're thinking of this as a career. So, but I think everything starts from the commitment.
yeah. And I also know this about you, and I certainly heard it today on the show, is your passion. So there's the commitment, like saying, yes, I'm in on this career. I'm committing to it as an entrepreneur. And what about the passion piece? Because you have held on to this passionate, about women and what you're bringing to them. And what would you say to coaches about the passion piece?
It's definitely a must. It's an inevitable must. But I feel that a lot of coaches do feel that passion. As they study coaching and as they become better at coaching, you know, the passion grows in them. I think it's just the nature of what coaching does. It's the magic of it that when you see people change for the better, and that, you're able to contribute to that process, it's such a like a magical, beautiful thing, So I think the passion can grow. It's just what do I yeah, I mean, it's whether, you could have many passions. I have many passions. I'm a kind of generalist, and I hoard
Me too.
hobbies. So I'm passionate about many things,
Yes.
but it's like, what do you want to make a living, and what would you want to spend your time, majority of your time and energy on?
Yes.
So
So,
uh
so what I'm hearing with that is there's an impact, like deciding what's the impact you really want to have.
oh wow.
Yeah, right. That's big. That's what I feel is important. We kind of nail down three things, choose a profession, make a commitment, and then decide what is the impact. There might be 10 different things, but really narrowing it down and deciding this is the thing I most want to influence the world with and help people with and
Yeah.
bring that change about.
I think this is where the vision and your life purpose pieces come into. My life purpose is to help people ride the waves of life with joy
Ooh,
and resilience. And I feel like I'm a surfer who
yeah,
facilitates that.
you do. You
So I have
absolutely
that
do.
kind of greater kind of purpose, but with my coaching, I'm particularly, purposeful in helping women become free from operating in this mindless autopilot mode and start prioritizing their time and energy on things that bring them joy, without compromising their life and business goals. So, I have a smaller purpose that's kind of getting me up and running. And, I do a lot of other kind of coaching, but this is sort of my brainchild that I want to
That's
grow
right.
and foster
That's
in the
right.
long term.
And what I'm hearing, I'm going to need to wrap this up. It's such a great conversation. But what I'm hearing from you that I want the listeners to get is that you found a way to connect your passion to business success. You found a way,
Yeah.
it's like, here's the bigger thing that I could do it anywhere, but now here's how it's going to work as a coach. And you have held on to that passion, and it's beautiful to see. And it's been so much fun talking to you today, Joon. Thank you so much for joining us on this show.
Thank you so much, Kat, for having me. It's been a great privilege. Thank you so much.
So much fun.